Welcome to Test Those Breasts podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a recent breast cancer survivor. My life has been pretty nutso for over a year, and many of you most likely know just how overwhelming this diagnosis is, and the more I can help empower women, the better. I launched my podcast on June 11, 2023, which was the 1-year anniversary of my diagnosis, as a healing mechanism, and have made it my mission to help shorten the learning curve for future diagnosed breast cancer patients and their caregivers. I want you to know that you are not alone. I was told from the very beginning that being diagnosed with breast cancer opens us up to the sisterhood of all sisterhoods. But some people need that extra help and encouragement and all of the confusing and many times downright scary information they are being flooded with. I've been interviewing many survivors, caregivers, oncologists, surgeons, nurses, therapists, advocates, and more in order to provide much needed holistic guidance for your journey. Breast cancer is such an epidemic, so the more empowered we are, the better. Now let's listen to this next episode of Test Those Breasts. Today, I'm so happy to have my friend, Isha Casagrande, on my show. Isha and I have been friends for quite a few years and have really had tons of conversations. But when I found out that I had breast cancer, I also found out that her own mother had breast cancer and unfortunately passed away. So during her very early 20s, Isha had to learn to live without her mother throughout her entire adult life, as her mother lost her battle with breast cancer at the age of 45. Isha has done well for herself and has manifested a beautiful, successful, and healthy life as a wardrobe consultant and image consultant. Isha is passionate about creating an environment that teaches women to feel self-confident. She is a passionate advocate for women's mental health and guides them as they discover the beauty within themselves. She focuses specifically on fashion, food, fitness, and faith as connectors for women to feel empowered through positive and authentic experiences. She provides the tools needed to create healthy habits that show women how to fall in love with themselves from the inside out, and then motivates them to radiate that beauty from the outside in. She is authentic and has a unique sense of humor, which creates inspiration in ways you did not know you were missing in life. Isha Inspired is a lifestyle brand focused on styling beauty from the inside out. Her mission begins with a simple premise: confidence is the most fabulous accessory a person can wear. Her passion is inspiring you, and her mission is to teach you how to love yourself through fashion, food, fitness, and faith. Well, hello, Isha. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, Test Those Breasts. It has been in the works for a little while now. We've had conversations about you being on my podcast. And one of the reasons I wanted you to be on this show is because when I got breast cancer a year ago, June 11, I discovered that your mother had breast cancer. And I just wanted to have you share your story about her journey and your journey at the same time. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. You know, you have just been just this passionate advocate. Like, it's really amazing to watch women go through what you've been through, and then it becomes just such a powerful force in your life. So I'm excited. You know that I'm passionate about women, everything to do with women. And so thank you for letting me tell my story. And I'm a little emotional thinking about my mom, because it's actually in 2024, it'll be 30 years since she passed away. So it's been an interesting journey.
So you have been a motherless daughter for many years, starting from when you were very young, because I know you and I are approximately the same age. I think you're a little younger than me, maybe.
I'm a deck of cards.
Yeah. So we've known each other for quite some time. And I come over to your boutique and Isha Inspired is what your company is called, your business is called. And you are quite the icon here in Reno and also San Diego. And mostly I know you from Reno, obviously, and I've come over to your house. You have helped me with my wardrobe over the years. I was a cabbie stylist, and so we kind of had a lot in common. We have coined our wardrobe Kabisha. So sometimes I'm wearing cabbie and sometimes Isha. And so I love to promote other women. I just love to lift women up. So this podcast is literally right up my alley, especially having had breast cancer. And now I've just become this fierce advocate for women, even like you. So what I would like you to do just to start off with is just share your story about your mother's breast cancer and how it impacted you and your family.
It was interesting. My mom actually hadn't been feeling good for a while, and probably about a year before they actually found her cancer. This was, again, 30 years ago. So things have changed so dramatically with breast cancer and all kinds of cancer, actually. But she had a birthday party for me, a surprise birthday party for my 21st birthday. And that night, when she was cleaning up, she fell down. And that was kind of the pivotal moment where she just couldn't recover. Her body just was sick. So my mom wound up they locked her up. I mean, it was just very, very different then. By the time they found her cancer, it had already metastasized pretty much everywhere. And at that point, so I was 22 years old when she passed away. At that point, they would lock you up in the hospital and pump you through chemo that was so violent. So violent. She was in the hospital for 6 months and literally just deteriorated. It was really interesting because we were still very hopeful. She was very hopeful. And unfortunately, her situation did not turn out well. But we went through a lot. We went through a lot of the traditional treatment. And then it was really interesting what happened because she was a powerhouse. She was a huge powerhouse. And I remember after 6 months, I remember the doctor coming in and her going, okay, what's next? What are we doing now? Even though she was like a shell of a woman at this point. And they said, there's nothing more we can do. And she said, discharge me out of the hospital. And she went down a whole homeopathic treatment road at that time. And you know what? We had a really amazing year. So it was really, really an incredible thing that we got to go through. So impacting me, I lived with a lot of fear until I turned her age. She was 45 years old. 2 weeks after her 45th birthday is when she died. And it was really interesting because from 22 to 45, I didn't realize how much it affected me until I turned 45 and I was healthy. I really expected to die young. And so when I turned 45, realizing the weight of the world had been taken off of me. Now, that doesn't mean I'll never have to deal with it, but it just really made me realize that I lived with a lot of fear. You know, I don't want to live with fear. It is scary. It is something that we deal with. Fortunately for us now, there are so many things. You're a walking testimony of that, where it is survivable, where, 30 years ago, I mean, it really was kind of uncurable, especially once it got to a certain point. But through all the steps and stages of it, I remember it all. And there were really, really hard times. And it's interesting to me, the hardest times for me, I still remember like they were yesterday. And even getting ready for this, it's like, whoo, all those memories. I actually had some interesting dreams last night, even about her. So I don't even think I got sleep last night because it's just still hard, right? Even after 30 years, you've lost your mother too. It's just to think of, I've lived my entire adult life without a mother, really without a female in my life other than what I do for a living, is strange sometimes.
It is. And I learned a lot about loss of mothers. And early on, when I first lost my mother, I was connected to an author who wrote a book called Motherless Daughters. Mm-hmm. It was Hope Edelman, I believe. Yep. Hope and Edelman. Yep. She was a very young girl when she lost her mother too. So I learned a lot about this idea of losing your mother when you're very young versus when you lose your mother at the end of her life, like 80 some years. Well, she was 78, my mom was. But the difference between losing your mother when you're young like that, like you were, versus when I lost my mother. It's all very hard. It's all overwhelmingly hard, and it brings a lot of trauma to our lives. So reading that book has really helped me understand people like you, because you still have that memory and you probably had a wonderful relationship with your mother that will never be forgotten.
Right.
And so to think about that and dream about her.
Some of the things that are really interesting to me now, so I mourn differently now. It's been so long, and honestly, it's like she never lived to be my age.
Yeah.
When I get sad or go into that mourning stage that happens every once in a while, it's more when I'm experiencing something and I realize, my gosh, she never got to experience this. That's what makes me sad. It's not even so much losing her anymore that it is like, it just makes me sad that she didn't have the opportunity. She was a fighter. Like, she would have been a huge advocate had she had the opportunity to be a woman that could have been healed from this. And, it was scary. And you and I have talked in the past, and actually with lots of women, of how we have to be our biggest advocates for our health. Like, we have to push. If something doesn't feel right, we have to be able to trust that. I call it, for me, it's self-diagnosing. I want a doctor that's going to let me do some self-diagnosing. I know my body better than anybody. Mm-hmm. So when something feels off or wrong, my mom went to the doctor for a year. We actually had hired an attorney after she had passed away. And it's really hard in a medical malpractice, so I've seen all the records of everything she went through. I have them all. I have all the original x-rays and everything from that. But it's like, she kept pushing and pushing and she just wasn't heard. And so it's very different now because we do have a lot of advocates and we do have a lot of opportunity, and it's taken much more serious now.
Yeah. And we do have more providers who are open to shared decision making. Whereas when your mother was diagnosed, it was more of a patriarchal type medical, system where you go to the doctor, your doctor tells you this and that's it. And you need to do this, this, and this, and that's it. That is changing. It has changed. We do still have providers out there who do have that mentality, but it's our job to be able to advocate for ourselves and go get second opinions. I am very much an advocate for getting second opinions, even if it's the same answer that you got from the original one. We need to be able to do that. And I've just learned so much about the differences between providers. So that was actually this next question is you kind of started touching on this already, is how your mother's cancer diagnosis affects your own lifestyle and your own health. How did that affect that?
When you live in fear all the time, it's strange. It is an ongoing battle that I've had my whole life. I feel like it'd be very easy for me to go in that hypochondriac mode. Very, very easy. So even with us being our biggest advocates and trusting when things are wrong, we also have to know when, like, okay, don't freak out, right? Don't create something that's not already there. I think the statistics of each one of us experiencing having cancer is scary. It's like there's a high probability that every single one of us at some point is going to deal with something on that spectrum. Boy, it's a lifestyle, just kind of taking care of yourself, right? So I think for me, I really try to live, I'm so passionate about women. I'm so passionate about celebrating life. I'm so passionate about, we got to smile. There are things that really do help our health, and it's being around like-minded people. It's being around happiness. It's feeling joy, and that makes you want to take care of yourself more. So I've kind of grown up and always wanting to take care of myself. I don't want to die young. I want to experience life. I want to be as healthy as I can. I want to feel good. That's really a big part of it too, is I want to feel good. Boy, everything that you've gone through, it's like you don't feel good when you're going through all that. You and I have talked many times, and really just spending time with yourself. I think like I have time that I spend alone where I'm just like in reflection, like checking in with myself. How are you? Are you okay? Are you living in fear today? Have you nourished your body the way you need to? Is anything feeling off that you need to pay attention to? That's a big one. Last night I was like, oh, am I having a heart attack? I did. I go into this like, freak out, right? Do you do that now too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I do freak out a little bit.
What is that? What is that? What is happening right now? Right?
Yeah. My stomach was having some issues several months back, and I thought, oh my God, I need to get a colonoscopy again, because I just had one when I turned 50 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. And I talked my doctor into letting me get another colonoscopy because my stomach was just doing all these weird things, and I was freaking out a little bit. And they let me have it. Nothing was wrong, but yes, 100%.
But if you weren't that advocate for yourself, Then you have anxiety in your life, which we know stress is just awful on the body. So then it can affect other things that are going on with you. I'm actually going in for a colonoscopy, my very first one. Ooh. And I'm 52. And the doctor that I saw recently was like, oh, you didn't have this when you were 50? And she goes, you have to promise me you're going to schedule this. Promise me. And that gave me anxiety. Now I'm scared to death to have it because I'm like, oh my gosh, was I supposed to do this 2 years ago and I didn't really realize it and didn't know? Again, we have the technology and the tools to be able to help us through some of this, but it's scary. I keep saying scary. I keep saying fear. I don't want to use those words all the time, right? So how do we find that balance in life from these experiences and feel empowered from them? If I'm living this fear, I can only imagine what you're feeling or somebody else that has been through the hardest parts of this. I've worked for years. I'm a wardrobe consultant, an image stylist, and work with women. I've seen it all. Women love to take their clothes off in front of me. They love to show me their breasts.
Yeah.
It's really, really an interest. I think you even once pulled up.
I did.
Women just do.
I always ask if you want to see them. I don't just go, hey.
But I've seen it all. I've seen the best outcome. I've seen some of the worst outcomes. I have friends. I've just seen it all. It's really quite something. It's such a personal journey that affects so much. So finding those other words out of fear. And again, like I was even saying earlier, being surrounded by women who are like-minded, who are positive, right? You chose to use this as a tool to change other lives and to inspire people. You know what? I would like to think I'd be that woman, but I don't know. I don't know. It's like everybody kind of deals with these things different. So yeah, boy, boobs are a pain in the butt, aren't they?
They can be, huh?
They really are.
They can be.
In my head, I always think, oh, if it were me, here's what I would do. Well, I imagine if it happened to me one day, it would be a whole different story.
Well, I have my lighting is a little bit off, so I'll take this out of the. That brings me kind of back to one of the surgeons that I interviewed, Dr. Manos Chrysopoulos, and he actually created an app called the Breast Advocate app. It's free. Oh. And we talked about this because with my situation with what I did with my breasts is that I had to make the decision very quickly at the end of my chemo. And I was going the mastectomy implant road, which a lot of people do, which is great and fine and all that. I just didn't want to do that. I knew that I had to have a mastectomy on one breast, but I found out about the kind of surgery that I had that I have told you about, the deep flap surgery in New Orleans. And had I known about this app, I could have been doing research from the get-go, from this year ago summer when I first was diagnosed, and researching the kind of surgeries that might have been appropriate for me and been able to research. It's all research and experience backed. This was created by this surgeon because he wants women to know what options would be best for you, maybe, so that you can make some decisions way before you even have to have surgery, hopefully. So, I want people to know about that. I want people to know about that.
And I love that too, because if you just go Google different types of, there's too much information. You need solid information and a resource to go to so that you can make the best decision for yourself. Yes. And also know, what works for what one person wants, it doesn't matter, right? It's so personal, what happens to you that I love that. I need to download that. I hadn't heard of that yet. So I want that.
Every single person, every woman and man, because they do talk about male breast cancer as well in there. And we don't want to forget the men because there are men who get breast cancer. And so they have options too. And every person should look at that. It's free. It will always be free. Dr. C said that it will always be free because he wants people to have that education. He works at PRMA in San Antonio, Texas. And there are surgeries that women have. They have these options that may not necessarily be available in their area. So the kind of surgery that I had is not available in our area. So luckily I had 3 little birdies tell me about someone they knew that went to either New Orleans or Georgetown. I think, Georgetown in Washington, D.C. area. And so I was like, whoa, I need to hear about this. And I'm actually going back to New Orleans in December to get my phase 2, which is the revision. So the first part is to make sure that the flaps and the blood vessels and all that survive. And then the second one is to sort of reassess, revise, fill in what needs to be done. So
as we're talking about this, I was thinking about how it's funny. I keep touching my breast now, but I really
touch mine all the time. It's okay.
I don't even like to give myself a self-exam.
Yeah.
It actually scares me. I'm like, it's just, does that make sense? Like, do other women feel that way? Because I don't know. It scares the heck out of me to touch my own breasts.
Yes. I do touch my breasts, and people are going to be like, what is this?
Especially as we're talking about them.
Well, no, our breasts are very personal to us. I was horrified when I found out that I had to have a mastectomy because I loved my breasts. And I will tell you that Dr. Cabling in New Orleans made me love my breasts again. And I cannot tell you what that has done for me mentally, emotionally, and physically. And so, yes, I will say that even before I got breast cancer, I have always been terrified to do my own breast exams. Why? Because when I found out, number one, it feels weird. It's just kind of brings me anxiety. But also when I found out that I had dense breast tissue like you do and most women do, we feel lumps in our breasts. Even if it's not breast cancer, our breasts can have lumps in them. And so it kind of makes you freak out. And yeah, so you are not alone, girl.
I just had my mammogram just like 2 weeks ago, I think. And it was really interesting because the tech even said to me, boy, remember when they wouldn't even like tell you anything and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to have all this anxiety. Well, because I've had a couple that are flagged, it's almost good when you have one that goes wrong because they talk to you more, or they get someone in to talk to you right away. Actually, the last few that I had, they would send a radiologist into me immediately so that I didn't have that anxiety. But I just had this one, and the woman said to me, she goes, okay, so she goes, I want to show you something. She goes, I haven't looked at your records before. She goes, but this one area, it seems like there's a little something. Have you seen that before? And you know what is interesting is, yes, I have. And it's when I put on weight, and I'm heavier right now than normal. But it was so interesting because she asked me, we had a conversation where it's like, oh, I do know about this. She goes, I'm not worried. She goes, but don't be surprised if they want you to come in and have another one based on that, but we haven't looked at your records from before yet. And I was like, I'm actually not worried about it. It didn't even freak me out because I was like, all right, this has happened when I've put on weight, and I am. It was scary, but also it kind of empowered me of oh, I know this about my body. I can have this conversation. It doesn't scare me so much because it is something that changes on me. And that's the thing we have to understand too. Things are going to come up. There are things that we're going to have to do. So I'm actually going in for an ultrasound just because I have that dense breast tissue. Is it an ultrasound?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I go in next month. So, I'm just hey, I want to be proactive. Finding it earlier is so much better than finding it later. I don't want to be so fearful. And then I told you, I just went to my gynecologist for my annual exam. And even though she had seen my results, she got in there. I have never had a breast exam like that. And I loved it because it was a woman no, we have to be more aggressive with this. She goes, I want to get in there. Even though you have this, when I check your breasts, I'm going to get in there, unlike you do. And I was just I feel like I'm being proactive. And that does take away some of that fear and that anxiety.
It does. And I want to go back to taking care of yourself and listening to your body, because you and I have talked about this in the past where you're afraid sometimes to go in because you know what your mom had. You have that in your family already. I did not know. I didn't have any of that in my family. And it turns out that there's more of a percentage of women who get breast cancer who don't even have it in their family than people who do. But that said, if you know that it is in your family, it's important to do that. So going in and getting those things done and listening to your body, I feel like between the time that we spoke months ago and knowing what I had, you've seen me bald, you've seen me, all the things, knowing what you know now, I feel like there's been a little bit of a shift in your thought process where you are fine going in there. When you do go into your breast exam and the person is doing the exam or the mammogram part, or, the smashing of the boobs and the ultrasounds, if I'm laying on the table and they're doing an ultrasound, I always look at that screen and I look at their face. and I can always tell if they see something. And so when I was in for my mammogram, I always ask for a diagnostics mammogram. I insist on having a diagnostics, and that includes the ultrasound and everything. So when Dr. McDonald, my radiologist who was there on duty that day, asked to see me, I knew something was wrong. Why did I know? Because I already knew that I had a lump, and I knew that it was large. I could feel it. I already knew that I had been going throughout the months in the spring with twinges of like little twinges.
I remember
little zappers. And so I kind of knew. But of course, it was quite a shock when I found out for sure, because they got me in. I did a biopsy that week. I found out, the Saturday after my retirement party, Isha.
I know.
It's like, okay, so retirement, we had different plans for me. But knowing what you know now, more and more women getting breast cancer, it is scary. But it's also incredibly important to get your butt in there, because we know that knowledge is power. When we have the knowledge of what's going on with our body, and also because of this podcast, Test Those Breasts, that's all around the premise of early detection is key. So if you went in there and you got, say, stage 1 breast cancer, pretty easy peasy, not easy peasy, but
right.
It's not metastasized like your mom's. It's not stage 2 like mine, or 3 or 4, right? It can be caught at stage 1. I have many friends who've had stage 1. And even though it's a pain in the ass, you got, a lot of times radiation, sometimes surgery, all of that stuff, you've caught it early. That's what you want, is to make sure that you get in there, you put it on your calendar, you don't put it off, you go and get it done. Just like your colonoscopy. If they are to get into your colon and they see polyps in there, they can just remove them right then and there. And it's better than waiting until you're 55, 56, 57, 60 when you have full on colon cancer, right?
So it's interesting. All these things are kind of going through my head about my mom, like little flashes, little memories of different things. And we're talking about advocating for yourself. And when she went through it, like the image in my head is almost like she was this rag doll. She had no input whatsoever of what was going on with her. Her biopsy was awful. It was awful. Like I remember being there for it. She was in so much pain. It was so hard. They had such a hard time. Just all of it was awful, and not male bashing, not at all. But I remember all of her doctors were men. They had no idea whatsoever. Yeah. And it was almost like she had no choices and no options. And I think it's really important. I'm telling you, I would rather have people think I'm a bitch and I'm taking care of myself than not. Like if you can't handle doing what I want you to do for me, then maybe you're not the right doctor for me. Get somebody else in here. I have fired plenty of doctors where I'm like, again, we know our bodies, right? And sadly, this happens so much. Like so many people get cancer. I strongly believe we're eating it fully. It's in our food in America, 100%. And so many people are getting it that it's almost just like, oh, here's the next breast cancer patient. Here's the next routine thing that we have to do, where I don't think women always understand you do have choices. You do have choices of who gets to be a part of this incredibly intimate, frightening time. And not everybody has a strong support system. Like your husband was a huge support to you. I love that when we get to talk about these things, because like you, I want to empower women that we do have control, not 100%, but we do have control, that if something doesn't feel right in your body, hey, demand to have that. Like you demanded, I want a second colonoscopy. You know what? Fine, great. If that makes you sleep better at night, you 100% should get that. But same thing when you're going through it, if you're like, you know what? This hurts. This doesn't, when things don't feel right, we need to speak up.
Right.
Or even if somebody needs to stop and talk, just like, here's the things I can do for you if this hurts too much or it's taking too long. Here's the things that we can offer. You don't know what you don't know. Right.
Right. And I want to talk about caregiving in a little bit, but with my husband was a great caregiver. He did what he needed to do to get through, because it was a big deal. It caused a lot of trauma in me and him, and he can say, oh yeah, we got this. But I know that he was struggling.
Okay.
And there were times where my husband did not support me in my decisions to get a second opinion, or we went rounds on when I decided to look into going to New Orleans. We went rounds on that.
Wow.
So he's a human being. He reacted in certain ways that I'm like, whoa, this is my body. I get to do this. It's interesting. There's a meme that one of my friends posted, I think it was yesterday, and it says, everyone wants a strong woman until she actually stands up, flexes her muscles, projects her voice. Suddenly she's too much. She has forgotten her place. You love these women as ideas, fantasies, not as breathing, living humans threatening to be even better than you could ever be. So I thought that was really interesting because I am that person. I'm a very strong person. I do speak up for myself. And I told Dr. Crisopolo on our podcast episode that sometimes when I was speaking up and to my providers, I felt like kind of an ass sometimes. Like in my mind, in my heart, I felt bad because am I being too much? Am I being, too forward or whatever? But in my mind, I was thinking, fuck no, this is who I am. And I am going to get that second opinion. I don't care what you say. I'm going to get that second opinion. And guess what? When I did, it was the right thing to do.
Right.
It just was the right thing to do.
It's interesting because you were talking about your husband and caregiving. And I think for me, a lot of the trauma was all of a sudden at a very young age, I went from the daughter to the caregiver. And my mom and I were very close. I'll tell you what, nobody could put me in a bad mood quicker than her, though. She would drive me crazy. But I was her favorite person. I was her best friend. She was my best friend too. But, so we were very close. I became not even just her caregiver. Look, this is making me tear up. She shared everything with me. So I knew every bit of pain that she had. I knew every bit of fear that she had. And it was almost unbearable. And I think sometimes, and certainly not to discount what you've gone through, but it's really hard. I think when we love someone so much, it's almost like I can't do this. It brings out the opposite. I know at times I've reacted in ways to things where it's like, how am I reacting this to the person I love the most? I think we just do that sometimes, right? Isn't that the joke that you take out everything on the one that you love? But it's really hard. Sometimes I think for the caregiver, there's no one taking care of that person for the most part. You know what I mean? There's no one checking in on them. I mean, yes, there probably are some people, but it's really kind of like this intense boom. Everybody's life just changed. We don't know what's going to happen. I think it's a lot to be said, even for your relationship. Like that is a lot for a couple to go through. It would be impossible for couples to just stay strong and never to bump heads through it. It's just too much intensity in completely different ways on both sides. He's fearful of losing you. He's fearful of his whole life changing. It's interesting because I can finally talk about these things and people may go, what is she talking about? What is wrong with her? And you know what? It's the truth. When my mom took her last breath, I was praying to God to take her. I was praying to God for him to keep her with me. It was this two people inside my head screaming, take her, please don't take her. I didn't know what to do. I was so tired. The last month was so hard with her. We had a really, really good year when she was doing the homeopathic treatment. And then when it changed dramatically. But she was also pumped so full of poison and on so much medication and all those things that it's just a normal thing. Boy, I'll tell you, it's hard. The things for me, you and I have talked about this, the hardest moment for me, the one that just completely freaks me out was when my mom lost her hair. Mm-hmm. She had really, really long hair. And when she started losing it, I remember she had this big loose bun on her head. She just wouldn't touch it for a while, probably a week, right? So now it's just it's coming out, it's matted, it's everything. And she wanted me to be the one to cut it. It was one of the worst days of my whole life. And you know what? Part of it, I'm when I think about it, I'm almost mad at her that she put me in that position and she kept the hair.
And you have it, right?
I don't anymore.
Oh, I thought you...
I don't anymore. No, this is actually kind of an amazing thing. I don't anymore because it was really a burden to me. It was a burden to me. It was just an awful, awful day. And, it was amazing because what I watched her do is when I cut her hair, she put on makeup, she sprayed a little perfume, she put on a beautiful nightgown and robe and went downstairs to show the family her new look. So it was a very different thing for her. For her, it was like I empowered her because I was the one there going there with her. She never had no idea what that did to me. She has no idea how freaked out I am about losing hair. Like I have weird issues with hair, but actually it was a burden for me. And I thought if something happens to me, my son didn't even know her. I don't want him to be like, whose hair is this? You know what I mean? Like what is going on here? So my mom and dad were not together when she passed, but they had a really special connection and they actually spent a little bit of time together right before she passed. My dad's an old hippie. I was born on the dining room table. I have it in the boutique. Like full on hippies. And he wanted it because he wanted to go have ceremony, like where they spent time together. And so he actually has it. But what's interesting is he's called me a few times talking about it, where I think he realizes how powerful it is now to him of like, oh my gosh, I have a piece of her, So it's interesting. That freaks me out almost more than anything.
Right.
That when I lose my hair. You were bald.
Oh my God.
Bald. Not everybody is bald. Like also you're like, oh my gosh, what shape is my head? I mean, I remember both of that.
First of all, I want to say right now that to my audience, Isha is absolutely gorgeous. She's got a beautiful face. She's got a beautiful head. So I know that if it ever did happen to you where you had to lose your hair, number one, you would rock it. I'm telling you, you would rock it. And I was in that position. You know me, I had long blonde hair for a very long time. I absolutely was freaked out when I found out I was going to lose my hair. I mean, like, I remember asking my oncologist, I go, am I going to lose my hair? And she says, you're going to lose your hair. And I'm like, fuck. I mean, like, I was really freaked out. Okay. And so what I decided was to take control of how it was going to be lost. I gathered a few of my girlfriends, my tribe. Okay. So when you get breast cancer, you pretty much find out who your tribe is, right? Sure. Really find out. And we have to be okay with some of the people that we thought were going to be part of our tribe are not part of your tribe necessarily. So, and that's totally okay. I mean, I've gone through an evolution of understanding, but they went with me. They picked me up, brought me up to the little salon up the street. And I ended up getting this really cool, badass haircut. I shaved it all on the side and it was short right here, totally shaved up to here. And then I had this A-line cut that came down to here. And I have pictures still that pop up on Facebook and things like that. And I actually really loved it. It was really cool, but I only had it for like a week. So I told my husband, I said, hey, when my hair starts falling out, when I'm starting to be able to pull it out, this is when you have to shave it for me. So right after my very first treatment, 1 week later, that's when it started happening. And I went live on my Facebook group. So I was very, very open. Very open. I was not private about anything. And that I know is what carried me through. It just was. I showed my bald head. I showed it all. I showed the loss of it, all of it, the growth of it, all of it. And so we went up to Taylorsville where we go a lot. And my husband and one of his best friends and his mom, we were up it was raining, pouring rain. And we were up on the deck and they cut it into a pixie. And then my husband shaved it. And at first he was like, I don't know if I want to shave it, babe. And I said, why not? And he says, because it's too traumatic for you. It's just going to be so traumatic for you. I go, babe, I've already gone through trauma. I've already went through the phases. I said, so I need you to do this. And he did. And it was a good way to do it. And then I just went around rocking the G.I. Jamie, he called me, look for a while. Then it started coming out. So that's when I really started wearing beanies and hats and turbans and things like that. Big earrings. Mm-hmm. And I dressed up with my cabbie and Isha. I made sure that I put makeup on. I read a book called Pretty Sick. It was called Pretty Sick. Mm. And in my link tree on my Instagram, I have a link to that book. And I recommend that book to everyone because I read it from front. It's really great. And it has like links and where you can find certain products of a woman who got breast cancer and how she dealt with her skin and nails and oral health, all of it. And that's what I did. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just sick Jamie not doing anything for myself the whole entire time. And it was hard, but I did it.
It's powerful that you say that because, I've worked with women for over 25 years. Image coaching, I work with women one-on-one. I've worked with a lot of cancer survivors. I mean, a ton of women that have had mastectomies, as I said earlier. One of the things that I always find fascinating, and this is for every woman, this isn't just a breast cancer woman, but it is really, really important how we take care of ourselves. It is really I'm so proud of you that you did those things because people don't realize how powerful it is to get dressed in something you like to wear, how powerful it is to do all that you can to feel confident. Now, that doesn't mean you just 100% always feel confident. I don't always feel confident, but there are things that we can do, and it actually helps you inside, outside, mentally, emotionally, everything, when you're at least taking steps to try. So I think that is huge because, I'm sure you had days that you just stayed in bed, and sometimes it'd be very easy just to be like, that's it. That's all I'm doing. So I think that's where it's so great that you're doing this and that there's so many resources in the app that you were talking about earlier, because it does make me sad to think there's women out there that are just they're just shrinking in, and it's going to be harder and harder to survive it. And not even that, even on the other side, now you're a survivor. Now, what do you do with that? If you went through something and felt like you had no resources, I've always wanted to help really make over. I always thought that would be part of my store and part of what I did. And I've been thinking about that recently since you and I started talking about this, of how I would love to be that safe place for people, where they can just come in and show me their boobs and feel good. And gosh, putting on lipstick can change your whole day. You know what I mean? It can just change your whole day.
It can. That's what I do. I put on makeup. I don't wear as much as I used to, but I do put it on, and I do kind of put little clips in my hair. And, I always make sure that I'm dressed up. And yes, there were a lot of times when I was in bed, but I did drag my ass out of bed sometimes, a lot of times, and made sure I went walking, even a little bit of exercise, walking up the street as hard as it is, or around the block. That's one of the things that my husband was really good at, is making sure that after I went through the chemo treatments, I would get up, we'd go walk the dogs. And it was hard. We did a lot of walks around the block with our dogs, and I would come home just exhausted and sweating. But I will tell you that doing that helps you get through the treatments a lot better and faster. So making sure that you're feeding yourself leafy greens and healthy. I essentially went plant-based. Every so often I'll have a little bit of meat, so I know it won't kill me or anything like that. But I've just really gotten into this plant-based diet and making sure that I get my exercise, whether go to yoga or getting on my exercise cycle or going on a hike or whatever it is, and taking care of us from the inside, and then making sure that, taking care of ourselves on the outside as well, as far as getting dressed and putting makeup on, and making sure also that you're looking at your products, looking at what products you're putting on your body. I heard you say earlier that you feel that we're eating cancer, and there's so many things that you can do to avoid that kind of toxins in your body. For me, and I want to go back to, because for me, I feel it in my bones that stress and trauma is what led to me being open for cancer. When my mom died, you know how incredibly devastated I was. And I still am just so heartbroken about having her gone. It'll be 4 years this October 6th.
She was such a feisty little fabulous thing. So glad that I loved when she would come shop with you. So
my God. She loved fashion, Isha. She, when my brother made the video for her celebration of life, first of all, everyone loved my mother, as evidenced of how many people came to her celebration of life. It was unbelievable. But my brother had made this amazing video that started back from when she was born and went through the decades, through the decades. And my mother, number one, could wear the most ugly stuff ever when she was home. But man, that woman she had such style. She lived through the decades, and she emulated, I guess is the right word, the hairstyles, the fashion, and all of that stuff. She was a sharp dresser. She always had, her nails were always on point. Even in the hospital, I remember in her last days, even in the hospital, I would say, Mom, your nails look immaculate. She died with the most amazing nails.
But you know what? But she also like really put out a lot of light, like the times, that I met her. And so that even goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like you have to take care of yourself. We all have light inside of us. It's easy to kind of hide that light because I think a lot of women don't think that they have it where it is in there. So what is it that lights you up? What can you put on that makes you feel good? Is there a lipstick color? Is it the way you do your hair? Is it fingernails that do it for you? Is it clothing? I have a clothing boutique. I see 100% difference in women when they are dressed in something they feel good in versus when they're just wearing what was in their closet that doesn't make them feel good. You were talking about your mom, and it's so funny. I just had some girlfriends stay here, and they're younger friends. So I feel like I just got this like burst of youthful energy because they were staying here with me. And, it got cold. It's been cold here in Reno at night. I have the worst pajamas. People would die if they saw what I wear. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think that I need some cute jammies. It was awful. It was awful. But I totally understand that because, hey, and that's okay too. Hey, you can do whatever you want. But again, taking those steps and having that time with yourself of just like, okay, right now, what's going to make me feel good? Even if just every day, there's just one little thing that you do for yourself that makes you feel good, do it. It's so powerful in every aspect of your life to treat yourself like you would treat your favorite person in the world.
You know what I did? One of the things that I learned how to do when I was bald is put eyebrows on. Okay, so this podcast, I want to say, is truly about supporting women in their journeys from diagnosis through their journey, through their healing and recovery and healing. There are so many things that I wish I would have known. I actually am the type of person to reach out and get that support from people. There's so many people who are just like in a shell and like, oh my God. And I really want to be able to provide all the myriad of different resources and ideas that we can do to tumble through this. I really feel that this podcast is one of them. Just bringing you on this podcast episode can help so many women think about what they're going to do when they go through, when they're bald, when they feel awful inside. How is it that they can make themselves feel better? Whether that be putting some eyebrows on. It's not the end of the world, especially if you catch it early. It's not the end of the world. Yeah. And we can tumble through this and you will come out on the other end a different person. You're you at the core, but you're a different person with so much more knowledge, so much more experience, and so much more passion to help women get through it themselves. So I feel like your story about your mom and your story about being the caregiver and how it made you feel, shaving off the rest of her hair. I just really feel like, you've gone through trauma. You have childhood trauma or 20s trauma when she died all the way through the age of 45. And you still have some trauma going on right now, but you're using that to change the lives of other people and yourself for that matter. And it has led to you being understanding that you need to advocate for yourself. You need to go in for those mammograms to catch it early. As a person, it would probably devastate you if you would have to lose your hair, but you'd get through it. Through it.
I would.
And
can I share one thing with you really quick?
Yeah.
This is for any person who's listening. These are 3 steps to feeling confident, to feeling better, right? And there's steps and it works. It 100% works. And it's, since we're talking about like doing one thing every day, doing those things. So here's 3 quick ways that you can feel confident and more fabulous right away. One is when you wake up in the morning, just put a smile on your face. Actually smile right now. Do you just feel how everything just went like this? By putting a smile, a real smile. And sometimes I'll be laying there, I'm like, this feels so ridiculous. But at the same time, you're like, the bitching and complaining in your head, or like, I didn't sleep well, or whatever it is, kind of goes away. So you start there with a smile on your face, which helps. And sometimes you do have to fake it. Sometimes you got to do it to make you feel better.
Smiling like that too, and being aware that you're smiling like that and feeling ridiculous also leads to laughing, which is really good for you.
Love laughter. So that's step one. Step two, every day, look in the mirror and say something nice to yourself. And you know what? I know when we're down because I'm telling you, I'll look in the mirror and go, ugh, you're fat. Oh, you're whatever it is. But to look in the mirror and just be like, you know what? You're a survivor. You know what? You got up today. You know what? I'm just proud that you remember to put the smile on your face. You're okay, girl. You're going to make whatever it is. It doesn't matter. It could be like, you know what? You are so smart. You may not look your best today, but you are so smart and you got things to do today. You got people to inspire. So you say something nice to yourself. So wake up and smile, look in the mirror and say something nice to yourself. And then make sure you are wearing things that make you feel good. You know, from being with Cabby, like I have clothes hanging in my closet that don't make me feel good anymore. I'm going through a big transition. I just turned 52 and I'm really like, I even put something on the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, I would never, it's just not me anymore. So I'm going through a big transition. I don't want to wear things that don't make me feel good. I want to wear things that make me feel good. And it may not make me feel 100%. It may be the same outfit every single day for a while. That might just be the thing. But when we're wearing things that make us feel good, it helps. So actively putting on a smile, not just even in bed. I smile in the car, smile. It makes you feel good. Show off those teeth, right? And then say something nice to yourself, whatever you need to say, doesn't matter. Just find something nice and then put on something you love. Those three things will just help kind of give you that reset. Right? So even on the days that you don't feel good, if you're used to doing those three, it's going to help just a little bit. And I know that when I'm so down, I want anything that's going to make me feel just a little bit better.
And accessories help.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful earrings. You have beautiful earrings on right now. You've got a beautiful hat. I know you love the off the shoulder look. And actually you're the one that got me into off the shoulder look. So I love that. So let's wrap up here. Is there a message or legacy from your mother's experience that you would like to convey to others, my audience, when they might be facing maybe similar challenges?
You know, she wasn't afraid to talk about it. And I think that really taught me to be very, very open. Earlier, I said, you know, some of it was hard because I was really her confidant. So some of it was hard for me, but I was a young girl. But I loved that she would talk about it. She wasn't afraid to talk about it with people. She was a fighter. She was a fighter. And she gave a lot of power in that, where even though it was scary and everyone else around her was fearful, she was like, here's what I'm feeling today. Here's what I'm doing. I feel like I remember more the good than the bad, the positive and the happy, because she really did know. And especially then knew this is it. This is it for me. This is all the time that I have. And it's actually quite a beautiful process when you get to go through the transition of somebody, because you get to say the words, you get to say all the things. So for me, I feel like I live life, and this is interesting. So I'm saying this, here's her legacy, and I never even put it together. So now I'm going to cry again. I'm not afraid to tell people how I feel about them. If anything, I'm probably too deep and too mushy with people. I'm not afraid of that. And this is probably the first time in my life that I realized that came from her. So I think that is a huge thing, is that, you know, sometimes we're given an opportunity. I know that sounds awful, but cancer for you has been an opportunity that has completely changed how you talk to the world. They are opportunities. Everything that we go through in life is an opportunity. And how amazing to use your voice. Like, I'm so, so proud of you. And I just love that through all this journey, look at how we get to what a gift you just gave me. What a gift you just gave me to realize that. Oh, I'm probably going to cry my eyes out later.
I know. I'm sitting there crying too. I tell people, I'm glad that you said that about your mother, because there was no other option for me but to be open and to talk about it. And I may have been an annoying pain in the ass for some people. I don't know. I'll probably never know that. But what I do know is that I have had so many people, even people I don't even know, reach out to me and say, Jamie, thank you so much for sharing your story so raw and pure, and all the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. I do believe that we need to walk into our feelings, have those feelings of fear, cry, scream, anger, happy, whatever it is, and do that, because we need to allow ourselves to walk through the journey with dignity. And also, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that it's an opportunity. It is hard to see that it's an opportunity. It just is. I did not see that at the beginning. I see it now. And I just interviewed one of my new pink sisters from Florida, Chrissy Florio, and she just talked about this was an opportunity for us to be able to inspire other women and bring in resources and shorten the learning curve for other women. So thank you for bringing that in. And I am so thrilled that you came on this show and shared your story. I know so much more about you now, and I just want to come give you a big hug. Can you share with our audience what resource you have? I know you have your website on there. Can you explain a little bit about your website and, just to help?
Yeah. So ishainspired.com. And so my name is actually, it's an old Hebrew name and it means woman. And not a lot of people know that, but really even that Isha Inspired really is woman inspired. I'm very passionate about helping women. I like to work with women one-on-one. It's not just a place to shop. It's a place to get to know me. It's a place for us to have community. You know that. When I go live, women just start talking to each other in the comments, women from all over the world that have never even met each other. And so it's really fun. It's the same kind of thing as this. We're trying to create communities to uplift women. So I am always around. I love working with people one-on-one. I have the online boutique, but I have a lot of private services too. And I'm always honored when somebody wants to work with me and wants to discover themselves. And I'm really good, at a little capsule collection. I can show you how to wear like 30 outfits out of 5, 6, 7 pieces of clothing. So it is kind of fun sometimes I think when you're going through hard times, you need to do things for yourself that make you feel good. And sometimes it is just like, listen, I need some comfy clothes that I know how to put together, that I know how to do. And that's what I'm really good at, showing you how to do.
I can't tell you how many times when I was going through cancer that I watched your Wardrobe Wednesdays and Fashion Fridays. It really brought a smile to my face. So to my audience, if you want to have some good entertainment, because Isha's super down to earth and goofy, and she
crazy. Goofy is a good word.
She will be the dork, or whatever. But it's fun because you are such a fashionable, wonderful, great personality human being. And I appreciate you. And I need to come over and look at a couple of your pieces. I have a really good idea, by the way, just to think about this. You were talking about how you had some younger women over at your house. Did you have them spend the night?
Yeah, they stayed here. They came from San Diego.
Have you ever thought about possibly once a month or every 2 months or whatever, maybe once a quarter, having like this, almost like a bed and breakfast type at Isha's house? Just putting it out there because you like champagne and everything.
Oh my God. Too much, girl.
But I think it would be such a fun thing to do, to just have a certain amount of women over there and just get in their jammies and have a good time and have some dinner and some wine or whatever. And then take a look at some fashion and then wake up the next morning and have a little brunch and then scoot everybody along their way.
I love the idea. So I actually have a retreat coming up in November that I'm going to be doing actually at the clubhouse here where I live. We have a clubhouse and it's Flourish. Okay. So it's all about flourishing as a woman, but I love the ideas. I just love being around women. One of the girls, she slept with me in my bed, and it was so funny. We wake up in the morning and I go, do you mind sleeping with me? Because we didn't have enough room, I didn't have enough beds. And she's like, oh my gosh, she goes, that's so much more fun when you're on a girl's trip to be able to sleep. We wake up in the morning and just be cracking up about the night before. And then the other friend would come in and she'd lay on the bed with us and we'd all have our coffee and talk. Women are we're so fabulous.
They are. And you know what? When you find your tribe, you know who they are and it's fun. So a little fun fact before I say goodbye. Okay. My middle name, Deborah, is Hebrew. I don't know if you ever knew that. So there you go. Okay. So thank you so much, Isha. I just adore you. I always have. I feel like I know you on such a deeper level now. And to my audience, please visit ishainspired.com and check out what Isha has and how she can really, truly make you feel so, so beautiful in all different ways. And so to my audience, thank you for joining us on Test Those Breasts. And I will see you next time on the next episode. Bye, Isha.
Bye. Thank you.
Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open for guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. I rely on people like you to listen, rate, review, and share this podcast with your loved ones. So please enjoy my trailer and any other episodes. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm on Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.